Okay, we are now live. Let's start. Good afternoon sa lahat po ng nanonood ngayon sa Foundation for Media Alternatives. Ngayon po ang talakayan na Feminist self-care. So ito pong talakayan ay parte po ng series of online discussions under Women's Digital Agenda. So yung mga unang parte po ng discussion na meron po o naisagawa din ng FMA o Foundation for Media Alternatives ay tungkol, ang una ay meron din, nagkaroon ng discussion sa dummy accounts. Ang pangalawa naman ay nagkaroon din ng discussion sa DIY Feminist cybersecurity, kung saan nakasama namin before ang isang legal organization para dun sa pag-deal ng mga kaso sa online gender-based violence. Pero bago ang lahat, introduce ko din po yung Foundation for Media Alternatives or FMA, yung organizer nitong talakayan. So yung FMA po ay isang non-government organization at nakatutok po ito sa communication rights and policy. So yung mga programa po namin sa usapan ng privacy, surveillance, digital rights at ayun. Para po sa discussion ngayon, sasamahan po tayo ng ilang mga tagapagsalita. So, si Professor Rowena Laguilles Timog. To introduce lang, para sa mga hindi pa po nakakilala kay Ms. Weng, siya po ay Assistant Professor ng Department of Women and Development ng College of Social Work and Community Development ng University of the Philippines. Professor Laguilles researches on gender in urban communities. She also focuses on women and their work and feminist organizing. Our other speaker na din po ay si Ms. Maraya Reyodica, artist and cultural worker. Ms. Maraya delves into film, music production, writing, and media archiving. She has attended art residencies locally and abroad and has been actively invested on creative media and digital rights. So, ayun. Ngayon din po, sasamahan din po tayo ng Program Officer for Gender and ICT ng FMA, si Ms. Tina Lopez. So, good afternoon po. May mga greeting po ba kayo sa mga nanonood for this afternoon?
Hello, good afternoon. Looking forward to the discussion na.
Magandang hapon din sa lahat.
Oo, magandang hapon po sa lahat.
Ayun. So, ayun, good afternoon. Para po sa mga nanonood ngayon, live po tayo sa Facebook. So, we encourage lahat po na tumututok kayo na mag-comment po sa comment section kasi magre-react po tayo mamaya sa mga, syempre, self-care tips din ng mga fellow natin, feminists, or kahit sino pong curious about sa topic na to. So, ayun po. Start na po natin yung talakayan. I-introduce ko lang po yung topic ng saglit, para doon sa mga iba na curious pala kung ano nga ba ito. Kasi naisip po namin, yung women's access or yung women's support system patungkol dito sa self-care. Kasi more especially dito sa mga kababaihan na nasa aktivismo o nasa advocacy work, especially na they tend to forget then, or people tend to forget na women also share different roles and responsibilities in the professional setting and kahit din sa home. So we all suffer then from burnout. So when it comes to taking care of ourselves, ano nga ba yung mga practices natin? So that's what we're going to delve into sa discussion na to. Pero ayun, to start lang, gusto ko lang din po itanong or makuha yung idea nyo when we invited you as speakers din, Ms. Maraya, Ms. Weng. Ano po yung naging reaction nyo nung you were invited to talk on this kind of topic? Maybe Ms. Weng can answer first.
Well, self-care. Buzzword kasi siya lately, di ba? So ako, personally, despite all may mga criticisms din yan pero ako, okay ako with self-care, and I think timely siya na discussion, especially now na increasingly parang blurred yung yung work and private lives natin. Of course, sa kababaihan and those who do have to do gender roles, hindi yun bago. Pero ngayon, kumbaga na ma-magnify siya, na-enhance yung ganung sitwasyon. So I think all of us can relate to the need to self-care. So, good topic, kailangan siya pag-usapan.
How about si Miss Maraya po? Ano po yung thoughts niyo nung na-invite kayo to discuss on this topic or to talk about this topic?
I agree din kasi coming from like the cultural sector, a lot of people are also freelance artists or they work in, like they have precarious livelihoods that could likely disappear anytime. And with the pandemic, talagang many of us are suddenly grasping at paano na. People say that we're losing like the tangibility of exhibitions or the tangibility of communities, but then it's also the question of how can we sustain ourselves. And yun na nga, mas na-amplify nga din yung this blur between work, like with work from home, but this blur between the domestic and the supposedly professional. And I think it's really highlighting to a lot of people who don't acknowledge or recognize the invisible labor that women contribute to our household. Mas na-highlight na siya ngayon. And I hope that's sort of causing a shift in how people perceive that. Or like at least mas na-appreciate na ng mga tao ngayon. But yung for the woman naman, just because it's recognized doesn't mean na self-care agad. Kailangan din to take care of yourself. Yun. So timing nga din yung usapang self-care.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Ayun, so curious din kami, no? So to start off, curious din kami dun sa what it's like on your life. Like what goes on in the daily life of a professor, a woman professor, or a artist and cultural worker. And also Miss Tina din, no? You can join us in this. Ano nga ba yung mga activities na hinaharap nyo on a day-to-day basis? And then, may differences ba nito na napapansin kayo with your male counterparts of the same community? Maybe Ms. Weng can start again din po to answer.
Sige. Pagdating sa work, I don't consider myself in as heavy a situation as those I have come in contact with, yung mga community organizers, etc. No? Tago nga, nung I went through the questions for this forum, I keep remembering at least a couple of community organizers na sinasabi, hirap talaga ang advocacy work. No? That's on top of the daily work they have to do within the home for their communities. No? Kasi nga, tulad din ng sinabi ni Mariah kanina, andun yung pag-i-invisibilize ng advocacy work. May connotation kasi siya na voluntary, tapos you're doing it not for the monetary reward. So being that, parang people don't consider it as work per se. No? Ayun. So, in any case, as a feminist din, yung andun tayo, yung may acute awareness tayo of how the things we do and the settings within which we do this reflect much or mirror what happens in our personal lives nga. Ako personally, as ako formal organization ko ngayon, is CSWCD, I'm part of the academe. Hindi ko mako-compare sa mga community organizers na kilala ko yung aking advocacy work. And yet still, I find myself in the past few months, I've been very emotional, di ba? Overwhelming ang balita. No? Even when you actually already are doing something about what's happening, mabigat pa rin yung pakiramdam. So kung yung bigat lang naman ng work ang pag-uusapan, pagdating sa emotional na aspect niya, andun na agad yun. No? Tapos being in the development work, we meet deadlines din, project specifications, which some of us may think are just institutional parang hurdles, pero they also kasi ensure delivery of outputs that arguably are important din. So, andun pa rin yung pressure. And then, siguro i-highlight ko yung ngayon, this transition to going online. No? Everything we do, may adjustment tayo. Work, you have to learn this new mode of working with other people, communication man yan, etc. At ibang dynamics to get yourself to na naman. So at least yung topics na siguro yung emphasize ko.
I see. Thank you for that, Ms. Weng. Meron po bang idadagdag or ano po naman yung mga unique experiences naman po? For example, for Ms. Mariah po as a creative?
Well, in addition to what Ms. Weng said, this invisibilization of labor. I mean, even like these work jobs which we consider maintenance, which are usually relegated to women, or the biglang sila yung na-highlight as essentials. So, halimbawa, like, yung grocery workers, nagliligpit, janitors, suddenly, parang this maintenance work, which was only valued as like minimum wage jobs or some, diba? Parang sila na yung nagiging mas pinaka-important, but also they're the ones lacking protection, the nurses, the health workers. So even though we consider them essential, parang why don't we give them the due support, the due medical attention, the due even just like fair compensation that they deserve. Pero also like sa creative side naman, well, I think with a lot of artists then, sanay na working from home or at least working in a studio, hindi siya 8 to 5, pero still dedicate the same amount of, time and effort that goes into what we would maybe consider like what we conventional terms consider a full-time job. Pero I think that precarity or that lack of parang a formal structure. Yung formal structure kasi self-imposed, pero that lack of parang institutional support sometimes really poses a real problem, especially kunyari, mag-ayos ka nga ng studio, tapos kaya mo maghugas ng pinggan, kaya mo magluto, you have to go out and do the groceries, etc. It's always been happening, pero I think this crisis is exacerbating these conditions that have already been around for a long time.
Yeah, I see. So, na-bring up natin, no, yung mga, kumbaga, yung point din ni Miss Mariah is that meron na nitong issues before at na-exacerbate siya nitong pandemya tayo. So, like, yung na-mention ni Miss Wing na yung move, for example, for online, na nagiging din siya, na-highlight siya as essential na ngayong naka-work from home tayong mga professionals and all. And it also impacts yung development work natin on an emotional level and psychological level din, no? Kasi actually yung nature din ng development work kasi yun talaga yung investment mo, it really blurs yung yun nga, emotional investment mo dun versus kung didistansya ka lang for it to para lang masabi na professional work. Minsan for us na nasa development work, hindi siya masyado if really it's really this passion siguro that goes on with that kind of professional life. So ayun. I'm curious na ngayon sa if we're talking about this facing the burnout when it comes to our work. Kahit na we're at home, ano nga ba yung mga ginagawa nating practices to alleviate itong mga stress na na-face. Miss Wing, do you have any anything to share kung ano po yung ginagawa mo for yourself, for example?
Okay, for myself. Well, ako kasi yung tingin ko sa self-care, gusto ko iwasan na maging siyang parang band-aid or like reactionary. May personally, gusto ko na may set up yung buhay ko wherein as much as possible, normal, kumbaga part of the norm yung self-care. So, ang translation yan sa personal kong buhay is that first of all, you cover the basics. Adequate sleep, di ba? Eat on time. Minsan nakaka-yoga naman ako at even now na we're stuck at home, I do leisure activities pa rin, movies, books, no? Tapos, kilala ko na rin kasi yung sarili ko. Although ngayon, nagbago yung work patterns, etc. Pero, I know that I work better, more happily when I start with something creative. So, yung mga tinatawag na firefighting, nakuha ko yung term recently, yung mga firefighting tasks, hinuhuli ko yan right before the lunch break, etc. So, yun pa, naglalagay ako I put in breaks within my day. Tapos, swerte din kasi in our college, nasa values naman yan ng kolehiyo, no? Na ang mga manggagawa, di ba? May karapatan magpahinga, etc. So, right now, for example, isang example niyan, we do as little meetings as necessary and we keep our meetings short, no? Kasi nga, it's been proven that what you can accomplish through email. Email na lang, di ba? Kaysa mag-meetings kayo, may Zoom fatigue is real. Mga ganyang little things. So, institutionally, or as part of an organization, there are efforts to learn as we navigate this hopefully temporary but very taxing situation. So yun, nag-a-adjust. So in that respect, I consider myself fortunate. Tapos yun din, ano pa ba? Well, I take breaks from social media from time to time. I found that to be very necessary. And I still also keep a journal, di ba? Mga ganyan.
Ayan, thank you for that, Miss Weng. Pagdating dito kasi na-mention nyo rin, no? Like taking a break from social media. I would like to address this question to Miss Tina din, no? Kasi, for example, for the kind of work that we have, we always have to be online. How do you, what is it like for you to have that nature of work? And how do you manage?
Paano ba? Kasi ang FME naman, well, based on our experience, ang alam naman kasi ng iba, we work with a lot of things with regards to diba, technology, tapos kailangan aware ka sa mga tools or platforms na ginagamit, ganyan. So somehow, may advantage na ganun si FMA. Pero yung yung working environment niya before, is just an 8 to 5 hours. Yung parang ordinary offices din na nagtatrabaho, papasok ka ng 8 or 9, tapos uwi ka ng kung anong oras mo gusto, like basta makabuo ka ng 8 hours onwards. So ganun, pero during this pandemic, nag-transition din kami into a work from home basis. Kaya lang, ang naging flexibility naman nun, nagkaroon kami ng na hindi naman parang formal na usapan na, dapat ganito, by this hour, naka-check-in ka na or nag-log-in ka na. So, walang ganon. But, we make sure na every Monday, mayroon kaming check-in na ginagawa within ourselves. Kasi nga, importante din yon na tinitingnan kung nasaan na yung progress ng bawat isa sa amin. Kasi baka mamaya, hindi pa nakakasabay or nahihirapan pang mag-adjust because of the work from home setup. Kasi ang karamihan sa amin, nasanay sa 8 to 5 hours or 8 to 5, 8 days, 8 hours per day na trabaho. Nag-set up din kami ng ang tawag nito na productive software tool, which is the Slack. And then later on, we transferred into Mattermost para nakikita rin namin yung productivity-wise ng mga tao. Mahirap lang din siyang magkaroon ng sariling focus na talagang wholeheartedly ay 100% yung gagawin mong trabaho sa dahil may duties and responsibility ka as empleyado. Pero pag nasa loob ka na kasi ng bahay, I agree dun sa sinasabi ng dalawang resource speakers natin, si Ma'am Weng and si Mariah, na nahati yung oras mo for doing a domestic or household chores doon sa professional work mo. Kasi may may notion ka na I work from home. So technically, magtatrabaho ka na dapat ang area of focus mo ay trabaho. But dahil ito nga yung setup, nahahati siya na first day in the morning, ito pala yung gagawin mo. So may mga daily routine ka na dapat mong gawin. Like yung paglilinis ng bahay, pagluluto, or pag-grocery na binanggit na rin ni Mariah. And then that's the only time lang, pag natapos mo yung mga household chores na yun, that's the only time lang na makakapag focus ka na dun sa trabaho mo. So parang ganon ang ang setup namin sa ngayon.
I see. Ayun. So meron talagang yung malaking factor talaga din yung move to digital platforms. Pero I'd like to ask naman din when it comes to this kay Miss Mariah. Kasi she mentioned earlier about freelancing and then kasi remote work kasi yung freelancing. Tama na. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And curious lang ako dun sa part na what are the may mga malaki pa rin yung similarities now that we're working from home with freelancing. Pero what has been the major difference for you, Miss Mariah? And ano yung parts na nag-adjust ka and how did you do it?
Actually, I've been, like yung last full-time job ko, I was working from home for 2 years. So actually, sanay na din ako sa setup na ganito. But I think one of the major things I learned is that the cause of burnout is that yung parang sense of isolation na you don't see other people you aren't surrounded by other people. If you feel like you're working or you're overworked, parang wala kang kausap na. I mean, it's one thing to talk to your loved ones, but it's also another thing to seek support from your colleagues. But then I think it's, given that it's online, you really have to take the extra effort to reach out. You can't really meet by the water cooler, tapos dun kayo magchichika, or at least sort of recognize na even though you're feeling isolated, seek comfort in the people around you, or also recognize na like you're actually accomplishing something. You set your milestones for the day. I think it's really important to have a checklist na rin so you don't feel like you've parang ano ba yung ginagawa ko, especially if you have a big project na you don't see the immediate results. It can really be bad for the morale. Parang nakakababa talaga siya ng morale. So you also have to sort of just recognize and accept those small milestones you make along the way. And set boundaries, of course. Halimbawa, at 6 o'clock, I really cut off all work. And the way I transition that is at 6 o'clock, I close Slack, emails, ganon. Then I do like a 10-minute workout just to set my mind na parang, okay, the work day is over. I can relax now. So it's good to have these small rituals to break up your day. And yeah, I think another thing that I've realized is that, because even though I've been doing that setup for a while, ngayon, I don't think, like with a lot of people transitioning to work from home then or online platforms, I think it's really important to recognize the amount of effort you see, the amount of effort you see in an 8 to 5 na naramdaman mo yung activity around you. You still need to put that same amount of effort sa online because you only see the results, but then the effort behind it, parang minsan parang na-underestimate or hindi na-acknowledge. So I think we should also be rethinking then what we consider as, or we should also rethink how we perceive the effort that goes into the things we do.
Ayan, thank
And
you
also
so
don't work on weekends.
Don't work on weekends. Ayan, reminder para sa lahat ng audience natin na nanonood. I'd just also like to remind everyone who's watching to also comment kung ano yung self-care tips nyo. Especially na iba-iba yung nature ng work natin. Pero ano nga ba yung similarities na, kung may similarities ba na nabanggit with our speakers, or ano yung mga major differences na especially yung work from home na nag-adjust kayo, and how are you addressing it as an individual. Pero beyond din being an individual, no, every one of you, actually more of Miss Mariah mentioned din na reaching out to friends and family, for example. How are you doing this at this time? Like, I'm pretty sure may involvement dito yung nabanggit ni Miss Tina na digital platforms. When it comes to professional work, we use productivity tools. Pero when it comes to our support systems, how helpful has technology been for you, or unhelpful if may mga ganun pong cases? Maybe Miss Wen can start first.
Well, again, iniisip ko parang unfortunate na naman ako kasi right now I'm in Legazpi City. I was able to come home before the lockdown, first lockdown sa March, and our apartment is within a compound where our family is. So in that regard, kaya ko may nakaka-interact ko sila personally. Still, however, kami, buong family namin, because we still have family in other parts of the country, meron sa Laguna, etc. We do have a chat group for the family, no? So we update there. Tapos with colleagues, with friends from work or elsewhere, no. Andyan Facebook is still useful pa din, no. Chat, etc. For communication pa din, nagiging importante itong mga online platforms na ito.
Thank you. Ayun. How about Miss Tina? Do you have any additional inputs? How are you accessing support systems that you have, the use of technology?
Yeah. Oo, kasi maraming naglabas ng mga applications na available both Android and iOS. So meron akong isang, well, it's a personal initiative ko din, kasi parang it's good to remind me na maging hydrated ako. Kasi nga hindi ko naman complete palagi yung 8 glasses of water a day. So yun, may fina-follow ako isang chatbot na every 5 minutes, I have to remind myself to drink water, or kung nakaupo ko maghapon, i-remind niya ako na at least 5 minutes, tayo ka muna, move something, or go around within your area, parang ganun. It's a good, ano din siya, it's a good practice for me. Tapos, kung things are not really going well, sineset aside ko muna yung ano yung nagpapagulo sa isip ko. So, I'll try to, divert other, other activities, like halimbawa pagluluto. So maghahanap ako ng mga bagong recipe that I wanted to to share or to explore, parang ganon. So may ganun akong initiative. And then for some reasons, I also take care of my friends and yung mga loved ones by checking pag-check ko sa kanila regularly, like at least once a week, every Saturday night or Friday night, mag-check lang ako na i-message ko sila na, hey, kumusta na kayo? So parang ganun lang. It's just a very simple word, pero iba kasi pag nakatanggap, lalo na kung ang mga kaibigan mo are really working, parang sila yung mga frontliner talaga. Like, sila yung, ang tawag dito, direct provider ng mga nangyayari sa ngayon. No? So yung ganun. So, may platform ako kahit papaano, aside from the chat group. So, may chatbot akong pina-follow.
Yeah. So, more of ano din tayo, no? Sorry. Pag-maximize ng mga online apps na meron ka while they're there. Meron tayong comment from Facebook. Burns shared a self-care tip. Sabi niya, having a schedule and the little rituals as mentioned really help. And also stand up from your desk every 30 minutes or every hour if possible. Ayan. So, yung mga na-mention din na mini exercises and rituals, no, na they're really small steps that don't involve any high technology, but it really helps din physically as mood boosters din, no, that we have. So yun. Siguro ngayon yung tanong ko naman is kasi now that most of our work and our personal life or whatever nag-involve talaga ng online space. We have, na-mention ni Ms. Weng, yung group chat, ganon. Yung Facebook, syempre yun yung pinakamalaking platform. Pero has this also been a source of stress for you guys? And how do you manage, and what are your tips then on balancing yung well-being nyo when it comes to digital platforms? Maybe Ms. Mariah has tips po?
Well, sa totoo lang, iniiwasan ko na yung Facebook. For news, I keep up with specific Facebook pages, pero, or like, yung trusted friends ko talaga, but I really just try to avoid yung chaos ng newsfeed in general. And also, parang yung I agree with Ms. Weng na sobrang helpful yung mga chat groups and, mutual support, send each other friends links, updating, or kahit news links or memes. Parang, I think it's also like stripping down the noise or the chaos and just like really focusing on the important issues at hand. And I think it's also important then to take a break kasi parang sa social media, hindi ka talaga nakakapahinga. So I've actually gone back to playing games with friends. Lalo na ng lockdown, me and my friends would just play online games a lot na nakakatulong din. And I guess kasi somehow yung sa social media, you still feel like it's a substitute for real life. So what I liked about games naman na social practices is that parang hindi sa substitute sa real life kasi ito yung parang space of interaction. Ito yung space where that you share with your friends or your loved ones. So, nakakatulong din siya. Also, I have this plug-in sa browser ko that blocks my Facebook news feed, which is really helpful. Tapos minsan has like motivational quotes. Small thing, pero minsan kasi parang impulse mo na mag-scroll sa news feed, so that really helps.
Ayun. So, ayun, thank you for your self-care tips. No? So, ayun, may idea tayo no, on how we can take care of ourselves while we're working from home and also maximizing yung mga technology na meron tayo. But delving more into us as adults, like for you, paano ba, bakit ba importante na mag-self-care ka as an advocate, for example? Because I think people sometimes forget na as advocates, as activists, we also share the same burden of burnout. And how do you, kumbaga, how can you explain siguro kung bakit importante pa rin yung self-care when it comes to being an advocate? Siguro start na lang muna with Miss Tina.
Sabi na eh. Anyway, sa hindi nakakaalam po, I've been practicing social work profession for a decade, like more than 10 years na. So for within that 10 years naman under that profession, as a direct service provider, talagang darating ka sa punto na makakaramdam ka na ng burnout eh. So syempre iba-iba yung taong nakakasalamuha mo, iba-iba yung mga kwentong ang tawag doon, mga kwentong kinukwento nila sa'yo. Yung iba, syempre, some of them are very traumatic. Tapos later on, ma-absorb mo din yung ganong energy. At the end of the day, uuwi ka ng bahay. Talagang sobrang para ka ng binugbog. Alam mo yun yung feeling na uuwi ka ng bahay na ang sakit-sakit nung dito, yung shoulder mo. So feeling ko, yun yung one way of signal for me, no, na kapag ako ay nabe-burnout, ay yun yung may physical effect. So how much more pa yung talagang may physical tawag doon, physical interaction with other community. Mahirap din kasi yun, lalo na kung ang line of work mo ay talagang face-to-face, tapos kailangan ng immediate response. Like for instance, yung mga community leaders natin, hindi naman yung katulad natin na kaya agad mag-self-care. Kasi sa akin, ang self-care sa isang tao, medyo may pinanggagalingan din yan. Hindi ko alam kung sa iba, may matter of being a privilege and doon sa wala. Kasi kung halimbawa, community leader ka, tapos you are dealing a lot of issue, let's say domestic violence, tapos ikaw yung talagang lalapitan, ano yung way mo to debrief? 'Di ba? So wala kang ganong access, like katulad natin na meron chatbot na pina-follow, may social media na tinitingnan, may kinukuha ng meme. But what about these community leaders who are not able to access that particular resources? Mahirap din yun for them. Pangalawa, yung way of activism natin. Ito lagi ko nung nauobserbahan kapag may mga ina-attendan akong mga webinar. Ang laging question palagi sa mga resource person, ma'am or sir, kunwari yung resource person, yung host, sabi niya, ma'am, sir, kumusta na yung mga komunidad na tinutulungan natin. So pero wala nagtanong sa isang resource person na let's say kay Maraya, kamusta ka na bilang isang individual as a worker? So wala akong napansin na ganong question na na-raise. So I think mahalaga yung pag-recognize din na as a person, as a human, ay nakakaramdam din tayo ng stress, diba? Or ng burnout. Pero sa kabila nun, dahil nga masyado na tayong passionate dun sa ginagawa nating advokasya, nakakalimutan din natin na we need to take some break. And yun nga, ang question ko kasi palagi, ako naman, ang lagi ko naman ding binabatong tanong, tulong ako ng tulong sa iba or parang it's easy for some na lapitan ako. Pero pag ako na yung lumapit, sino yung willing? Parang sino yung pwede kong takbuhan? Or sino yung pwedeng makinig sa akin kapag ako na yung nangangailangan? So may ganun. Minsan may feeling of compassion fatigue na tinatawag. Or di ko alam. Pag sa online naman, virtual fatigue. So depende din kung ano yung setup din ng environment ko. So ganun siya.
Thank you. Ayun, since Miss Weng then has been working with communities din, no? And Miss Tina mentioned na kumbaga may privilege with self-care. What do you think about that po?
Oo naman, I totally agree with Tina. In fact nga, I think what's to bring back the point earlier made, I think what's feminist about self-care, kahit buzzword pa yan, kahit pinasikat na kung anong produkto yan, yung binibring back mo yung political question to the personal, di ba? Isn't that very feminist? It's like, we're as advocates, activists, we're working for a better society, no? If you want to put it that broadly. Pero, and going there, while wala pa tayo doon, importante pa rin yung ngayon, kumbaga, to put it simply. So, hindi pwedeng you're looking for justice, no? You're looking for changes in the wider political world. Pero yung personal mo, no, your intimate relations, no, hindi ka masaya or nane-neglect yung sarili mo. Even worse kung dahil nga sa advocacy work mo, kung halimbawa yung kinabibilangan mo organisasyon, masyado rin nakakalimutan din, ano, nane-neglect din yung kapakanan ng mga niya. May ganun tayong tendency minsan, ano, pag masyado tayong passionate, nakakalimutan yung mga sarili. And I think pagdating sa mga formal institutions, responsibility nila yon to look out, no, for their passionate members, kumbaga. So, tapos kung naisip ko rin kanina while everyone was discussing, sabi ko, why does self-care, no, the concept have to stand out? Ibig sabihin na the normal is self-harm. Ang sad, di ba? But it's true eh. Advocacy work man or not, our tendency is to push ourselves to be productive, di ba? To compete, to succeed, to meet deadlines, etc. Parang ang hirap mag-survive ngayon kung if you don't share those values or at least understand and know how to do them some of the time, no? So again, yung konsepto ng self step back, no, and parang reflect on where all of our advocacy work is going.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So this is really yung na surface ngayon yung really about rethinking self-care. And I'd like to bring up what Ms. Mariah said before, yung invisibilization of work and also the lack of institutional support. Ano po ba yung impact nito sa women or for you as a woman na ngayon ay nagpa-practice ng self-care pero at the same time also facing burnout and then having to also be an advocate. Parang different roles and responsibilities that you're facing, plus ito pang mga different factors na systemic. Ano po yung mga, do you have any insights about like self-care being a privilege? Narinig po ba tayo ni Ms. Mariah?
Okay. I think, definitely to be able to think about self-care and consider these things, it stems from a place of privilege. Pero, I think at the same time, kung meron tayong kapasidad to exercise a sort of self-care, although I definitely agree with what Ms. Wang said na parang, you have to debrief then, you're bringing back the political to the personal to make a better society. Ayun na nga, parang, kung may lagnat ka, kung if you have like a depressive episode, kung puyat ka, how can you possibly take care of others? I don't think you should burn yourself. Like you should set yourself on fire to warm others. Kasi, parang, it's not sustainable in the long run. And I think like, especially for the change you want, you have all these efforts come together to be able to sustain it, right? To sustain our efforts and to sustain movement. So, yeah, and that starts with something as simple as waking up, drinking water, having a routine, and just recognizing na, like nga, tao pa rin tayo, we still have our physical limits, we still have to consider our physical and mental health. At hindi it pwede bitawan.
I see. We also have actually another question from Facebook. It's from Ms. Lisa. Sabi niya, paano naman ang self-care? Actually, na-mention ata ni Ms. Weng earlier din, no? Paano naman ang self-care for women in poor communities who live in cramped spaces, especially during these times, who do not have access to a lot of things, health, finances, and internet? So anyone can answer. Maybe Miss Wei, maybe Miss Tina. Have anything to add?
Agree ako na may certain, kumbaga, advantage or privilege kung economically better off ka, no? Pagdating sa self-care. Pero of course, hindi natin i-limit din yung karapatan, kakayanan na to attend to the self because of that. Kasi dito na rin papasok yung kung paano mo tinitingnan yung sitwasyon kung nasaan ka that brings you self-harm. I mean, halimbawa dun sa konteksto ng community organizations, no? May mga kilala din tayo na while, walang access sa mga apps that remind them to stand up or take a break, etc. Pero nakakausap naman nila yung mga asawa nila ng maayos na kapag may advocacy work ako, ikaw ang bahala sa bahay. In a lot of ways, no? Self-care na rin yun. Actually, mas sustainable pa nga yun. Because kapag you're able to influence, no? Organize your family, ang laking bagay nun for them to understand how important your advocacy work is to you. So that within the family, within the household itself, nabawasan yung burden mo. Yun nga yung tricky nga sa kababaihan na may advocacy work o activist na nag-oorganisa kasi nga may on top siya, no? Pero ang dating doon, are we taking our gender roles for granted, no? So again, we do not limit self-care to accessing online apps, no, or having internet, even having kuryente. In fact, para sa akin, sustainable pa rin yung may changes ka sa relationships mo. Kasi yan pa rin ang magde-determine kung gaano kabigat yung araw-araw mo.
Yes, I also agree with that actually. Pero yung self-care siguro, pag himay-himayin mo talaga siya, marami siyang layers dyan. Hindi lang siya something physical, hindi lang siya something within your circle din. It's also something like, as you've all said before, na may lack of institutional support, no? Kasi when it comes to access ng ibang tao na wala nitong mga nabanggit nating apps or platforms, it's really more of yung mga galing from, for example, sa state, mga things na really hindi naman talaga are out of the control na nung isang tao na nasa komunidad, no? So, ayun. We also have another comment dito. May nabanggit. Sabi po ay, Audre Lorde said that self-care is self-preservation and an act of political warfare. Siguro kay Ms. Mariah, I'd like to get your insight. How do you think does this translate for you? Self-care is self-preservation and an act of political warfare?
Well, from yung discussion of lack of institutional support kanina, lalo na sa mga freelancers or artists, talagang, I think, this sort of expectation na, okay, talagang tayo lang talaga, we can't expect na may hulog ng langit. We've really cultured these, like, at least for me, I'm glad to have parang a strong peer-to-peer community na tight-knit. Hindi siya formal, pero nandun yung personal, efforts to or personal initiatives, artist initiatives. And personally sa akin, doon nang kagaling yung sense of satisfaction ko. Just coming together to work on a film, or coming together to work on an exhibition, or yung mga projects na ginagawa sa mga residencies. I guess just because it isn't seen as institutional, it's not recognized, yun, parang yung value or yung efforts ng peer, what you do with your peers, what you do with your, the people around you, or yung kapwa mong artist. So yun yung isa pang kapwa, and self-preservation na parang, like I said earlier, kung depressed ka, kung may depressed episode, kung may lagnat, how can you engage in political warfare? How can you be radical? And parang breaking down this, what enables us to be able to carry out yung advocacy natin. It has to start with being ready to go out there and,
Okay, I see. Ayun. I think I also want to hear from Miss Tina, as someone who's in social work. Like, what has there been, how for you is self-care an act of political warfare? Miss Tina, nakamute ka po.
Oo nga. Sa akin, ang self-care is a self-preservation. It's very autonomous yan sa part ko. Ako lang yung nakakaalam kung ano yung pangangailangan ng katawan ko. And then also my mind, di ba? Kasi tama yung sinasabi ni Mariah na you cannot function well kapag ikaw mismo sa sarili mo are not really doing well. If you're feeling unwell, hindi ka makakapag-isip ng maayos. So you have to take care of yourself. So very autonomous yan sa akin. And for me, it's personal, yun nga, yung babalikan mo yung very radical notion na personal is very political, no? So ako lang din yung makakapag-determine kung ano yung pangangailangan ko for me to be more productive. So mas ganun siya sa akin. And of course, kapag hindi mo naman pwedeng sinabi lang na, sinabi ni Mariah na, ay hindi, kailangan mag-take a break ka, hindi yun yung kailangan ko. So minsan, kailangan mo ring balansehin kung ano yung, yung pangangailangan mo and how do we make this kind of decision for ourselves. So,
I can add din pala. I think kasi in this question na parang sometimes when it comes to sapang self-care, there's this sort of siguro parang perception or critique na it's selfish, it's individualistic, it's indulgent. Pero, like what Tina said na parang autonomous, kailangan autonomous din siya. What self-care for you might not be self-care for someone else. And individuals all have their parang different avenues and means pagdating sa self-care.
May I also just add?
Yes, sure. Sige po.
Naalala ko kasi noon, in one of my researches, ano din siya, sa community organizer din. So, pag nagtatanong tayo, anong ginagawa mo para sa sarili mo? No? So, sabihin nila, manood ng TV, pero even then, nagtutupian ng kung anong bagong, yung mga bagong, mga sinampay, bagong, mga new laundry yan. Yung mga malilinis na damit. So, nagtutupian, o kaya nagwawalis-walis. Tapos, I was so happy nung may na-encounter ako na nagsabing talagang nagaan siya, nag-nail polish pag may time siya. So, I think, hindi naman dependent again to high technology ang ating self-care. Again, may sabi nila, ikaw yung magde-determine what you need at that moment. Or, at that moment at least. And then, just to idudutong ko rin, kasi may nabasa kong comment regarding yung mas community level or larger level na perspective on self-care. Yung binanggit ni Mariah kanina na may community sila, although informal, I think it's parang napakaganda niya. Tsaka proven na siya na kumbaga magandang venue for self-care. Kasi yung magkukwentuhan lang kayo, tulad ng ginagawa natin ngayon, nagkukwentuhan kayo, you find commonalities in your experiences, you make sense of them even, saan man mapunta. Pero the fact that you see yourself in others, and you take time to talk about your lives, I think that's already a good practice ng self-care. Siyempre, ang ganda pa kung tumuloy yan sa kung gusto nyong mag-organize for structural changes, etc. Pero at this point, for our topic, bibigyan diin ko rin lang na even saan man makarating yung organisasyon, never forgetting the importance of self-care in all our methods and strategies is very important.
Ayun, thank you so much for that, Miss Wing. Oo, ang dami yung points na nasabi, no? In fact, meron din ditong, just to add siguro yung one comment that we have, it's from Miss Irene on FB. Sabi niya, maganda talaga na magkaroon ng mga ganitong sessions sa community kasi para maiba naman ang kanilang pagtingin sa mga negatibong nangyayari sa kapaligiran, lalo na sa mga nanay sa community. So, it's bringing up another role of what a woman does. Kanina na nabanggit niyo rin na, actually, it's just a really simple analogy. Yung nabanggit ni Ms. Weng that I'm taking is sabi niya na habang nanonood siya ng TV, nagtutupi siya. And as feminists, we also kind of juggle these various responsibilities that we have. You can be a professor and then you are also an advocate of this certain siguro sabihin na natin urban housing kasi yun yung research ni ma'am. And then Miss Mariah is an artist while at the same time she's writing and then also producing music. And then Miss Tina is in social work and then she's also tending to her family and then her professional life and also with her friends even, 'di ba? Kahit na may professional talaga siyang social worker, kumbaga nadadala din yon as a person, 'di ba? Dun sa mga circles natin. And I just like to go back dito sa sinabi ni Miss Mariah when self-care is seen as self-indulgent. No? So, yung na-mention kanina ng one of commenters natin, I'm sure iba tong context yung nabanggit niya. It's more of pagtingin sa mga nababaling daw yung pagtingin nila sa mga negatibong nangyayari sa kapaligiran when they do self-care. Pero at the same time, nabanggit nyo rin na self-care can also be self-indulgent. So, parang paano ba? How do we manage this as women? Parang, why are we seen na parang when we're doing something as like nail polishing, while something na critical ay may nangyayari sa buhay natin, how do you address it? Do you have any experiences na nangyari ito sa inyo now you were like indulging yourself? How did you respond to these kind of comments when in fact you're just taking care of yourself? Did you have any experience from that? Anyone? Miss Tina or Miss Wang?
May I? Okay lang? Iniisip ko nga yung ganung yung statement na self-care is indulgent. So what? Diba? Don't we have the right to be self-indulgent some of the time? At yun nga, kung isipin mo, not to, iniiwasan kong mag-dichotomize pero very, very common yung scenario na kapag sinabi mo halimbawa, lalaki, they have to have some time for themselves. Inuman with the barkada or whatever. Ganyan. And we take it as normal. Nothing wrong with that. Pero kapag babae o yung nanay yung gumawa no, even just a bit of a time off from taking care of the children the entire day, it's seen as something self-indulgent. As if it's something wrong. There's something wrong with it. No? And yun yung tingin ko rin, idudugtong ko dun sa quote kanina from Audre Lorde, no? Na political warfare nga talaga siya because it's claiming, no? It's owning your time, your energy, your effort, your attention. And that's napaka-wild ba pagka babae yung gumawa nun, And it's very telling of the times that we're living in, no? That to tend to yourself is something, well, it is very political, pero at this point in time na ganun pa rin pala, no? Ayun. So, all the more mag-self-care tayo kasi it is a very political act, no? To say na, no, my time is not unlimited. I need sleep, no? Also rest, diba? So, yung ganun. Kasi that for granted nga yun, that as we parang endless yung ating mga sarili in the service of others. Nothing wrong with that as long as you're still happy with what you're doing, diba? Pero kung ka na, nawawala na yung sarili mo, pagod na pagod ka na, kailangan i-rethink.
Alright. Thank you so much for that. Ayun. Yes, Miss Tina, do you have anything to add?
Actually, may naalala lang din ako, no? May binibasa kasi ako, well, natisod ko siya, siguro nung weekend, may ginagawa kasi ako. So, may natisod akong isang article, sinasabi niya, parang it's a focus group discussion ng mga women in one of the IT community. Ang isa sa mga findings na lumabas, na kapag ang babae daw, naalala ko lang yung sinabi kasi ni Ma'am Weng, yung the dichotomy of a male and female role sa bahay. Sinasabi niya, kapag daw ang babae lumabas ng bahay para magpaganda, ang laging feedback ay nagsayang ka na naman ng pera. Well, in fact, yung parang for a woman, kapag nag-take a break ka, like going to a parlor or a salon or putting some nail polish to your nails, parang it's a way of ang tawag doon, you're breaking something na nakakapagabag sa'yo. And also, yung way mo din na para ma-refresh ka. Pero sa kabilang banda, yung nakikita ng ibang tao, it's just a waste of time and money na imbes na ipunin mo siya for food for the family. ay ginagastos mo siya for, to make you feel better. Parang gano'n na. Parang hindi ko lang alam kung saan nagmumula yung gano'ng aspeto. Pero ang surprising kasi doon, women to women yung nag-usap sa ganong aspeto. So parang magkaiba yung definition nila nung usapin ng self-care. Maaring sa isa ay pag nail polish or pagpunta sa parlor, o yung iba naman, ang way of sa pag-aalaga niya sa sarili niya is to save some money para makapag-produce ng pagkain sa bahay. So magkaiba din kasi yung pinanggagalingan ng mga individual na tao. Tapos, I don't think na yung self-care din ay isang usapin ng self-indulgence and ang tawag nito, or pagiging selfish din. Kasi nga, kung babalikan mo bilang worker, kung worker ang pag-uusapan or isang ordinaryong kababaihan ka, may pinanggagalingan ka palagi. At hindi mo maiisip yon kapag ikaw ay parang naupos. Ano bang another word for naupos? Parang unti-unting naupos. Parang unti-unting namamatay yung sindi ng kandila. Tama ba ako, Ma'am Weng? Or yung parang gano'n. So parang yun yung signal niya na hey, it's time for me to take a break. Parang gano'n. So hindi siya selfish actually. Nire-reclaim niya yung nawawalang energy. So gano'n. Hirap na talaga.
So kumbaga, what I'm getting is that self-care in a way becomes an act of resistance to reclaim this kind of habit na, well, in a patriarchal society is seen as something self-indulgent, especially when women are doing it. So, yes. Ayun. And then, siguro ngayon, since na-mention yun, no, na parang you are receiving or you have witnessed na yung mga ganitong sentiments na about self-care, what message do you want to give na self-care about this being seen as indulgent, like as like part ba siya ng advocacy mo? I mean, part ba siya ng work mo, yung self-care? Is it something na needs or does it also contribute to collective well-being? Yan. Yung individual practices mo, do you think this adds to collective well-being na people tend to forget that, or ano yung mga thoughts nyo about that when it comes to from just being an individual practice, how does it translate to a larger context?
Okay. Mauna na. Ako ba? O mauna na?
Sure, sige, go.
Then, naalala ko lang kasi yung sa FMA, yung environment namin, since well, sa ngayon lahat kami ay puro babae, no? Puro babae yung nagtatrabaho sa FMA. So may value kami doon sa usapin na sige, kapag take a break ganyan or let's stop it, parang so may ganon. So may moment of time kami na kapag sa trabaho, may collective idea kami na minsan gawin natin to. Or yung parang lang, minsan feeding program nga yung tawag namin. So may time na kakain kami all together, tapos bibili lang ng kung ano. Tapos magkukwentuhan lang. So it's part of our collective care. Pero beyond that, may mga policies din naman na tinitingnan. Halimbawa yung pagkakaroon ng yung setup na working from home. Kasi dati ang setup namin, 'di ba, it's 8 hour a day. So parang choice mo naman, may flexibility hour kami. So choice mo naman kung sasabihin mo na hindi ka papasok today because of heavy traffic or whatever the scenario. Magtatrabaho ka na lang sa bahay. So at least ina-expect ng tao na may gagawin ka pa rin. Pero yun nga, hindi ka ina-expect ng mas mataas. Parang may expectation na tinitingnan din. And also, yung pag-provide din ang tawag nito, nung healthcare insurance. So, bukod dun sa PhilHealth, no? So, meron kami for the regular staff, ine-encourage na, yun nga, magkaroon ng annual check-up, i-maximize yung healthcare card na yun, i-maximize kasi it's for your own benefit din. And then, may pagkakataon din na nire-review yung, ano bang tawag doon, yung manuals, yung human resource manual namin, kung ano pa ba yung mga other benefits than the usual, yung mga, di ba, yung leave of absence or whatsoever na, kung anong mga leaves yan. So, meron mga specific or special leaves na pwedeng i-avail ng isang staff para lang din makapag-take a break siya. And then, another thing na tinitingnan ko, may mga travel naman na ginagawa, may mga ganun, may mga special arrangement naman na pwedeng tingnan. At I think it's part of the collective care work yun eh. Hindi lang yung dahil lang sa mandato ng opisina ninyo.
I see. Ayun. So, just to clarify din yung tinatanong kanina, no? What I meant to say was that, pero thank you for that. Actually, yun yan. Siguro to better have an idea about what I was asking is that, is personal care really just about the individual? And what are your thoughts about this? Ms. Weng, if you have anything?
Yun nga, sa akin, sa totoo naman ngayon, no, pagka tinitingnan natin, parang privilege ang self-care. Pero dapat nga hindi, 'di ba? So, from the personal vantage point, maganda 'yon na dapat alam mo yung katawan mo, alam mo yung sarili mo, kung kailan mo kailangan magpahinga, kung anong mga kailangan mong baguhin sitwasyon para kumbaga ma-enable yung self-care, no? Pero nag-agree din ako sa mga points made so far na hindi dapat din tumigil sa the burden of self-care shouldn't rest on the person or the individual alone. Again, tulad ng sinasabi ngayon, communities, families, institutions, our employers, the government should put in dapat nasa kanilang burden to ensure that we are able to take care of ourselves. I mean, at the end of it all, 'di ba? If we are burnt out, exactly the point made kanina, anong matitira dyan, di ba? Unhappy workers, burnt out workers, and I'm talking about mainstream work pa ha, even more so pagdating sa advocacy work. And I think, pagdating sa advocacy work, activist work, organizing work, mas, para sa akin, mas kailangan din na aware tayo no sa mga organisasyon natin na we need to enable self-care. Kasi kung wala ka maaasahan sa gobyerno, dapat at least man lang yung organisasyon natin meron, di ba? Nandyan yung mga kailangan natin sistema to enable us to self-care.
Okay, thank you so much. We have a comment, and feel free to respond. I think Ms. Mariah can go next. Ang comment online is, na-realize ko lang, this is from Ingrid po, na-realize ko lang na mahirap mag-practice ng self-care if on a larger scale we don't practice. Na-realize ko lang na mahirap mag-practice ng self-care if on a larger scale we don't practice community care. If our barangay, LGU, national policies, or even leaders don't care or protect us, sobrang dami nito, pero few examples ay kunwari walang ayuda ngayong pandemya, gender-based violence every day, lack of SRHR, education, access to millions of women, etc. Ang hirap alagaan ng sarili kung hindi ka inaalagaan ng gobyerno. I know this sounds a bit dependent on others, but I think it's in our nature to be dependent and want to be cared for. Please check on your family and friends. Thank you, Ingrid, you too. Sige, Ms. Mariah, do you have any thoughts on this?
I just wanted to add lang kasi yung sa kanina, yung sinabing, the reason why I brought up kasi yung critique of self-care as self-indulgent is, siguro like one of the reasons nga is like, if it hindi siya nanggaling sa institution at nanggaling siya sa autonomous individual, is that valid somehow? Pero, back then gusto ko lang mag-add kasi sa idea of like selfish or even before this pandemic, kasi laging kina-question yung mga artists at yung mga musicians. Ano ba yung ambag nyo? Essential ba yung art? Or, now that it's been happening, people are like, why is art essential? Pero I think we should be asking, is art essential to begin with? Then you have this whole myth na parang, in times of crisis, artists will create provoking and profound art and blah, blah, blah. Pero paano mo na yung hanap buhay? And also maybe, that's why coming to terms pala with yung selfishness is also accepting na, okay, baka hindi nga essential yung art. Where do you go from there? How can you do something that's actually helpful? Kasi, kunyari ako, musician, wala nang gigs, wala nang tugtugan, I can't even record with my band. So what, hindi na ako musikero. But then you've had musicians recording songs remotely to protest against the anti-terror bill. You have artists making fund drives for PPEs and jeepney drivers sa Diliman. You have protest art. Or even, like simpleng, like yung mga infographics or yung poor visual design sa karamihan ng published materials about COVID. I think if people understood how arts and humanities could inform these efforts, mas nakaka-connect pa rin siya sa tao. Pero sa tao pa rin yan, parang hindi siya like boxed in or super concrete na definition. And I think that malleability of being like, okay, hindi essential, pero paano pa rin ako makakaambag? That gives people more freedom. Yung mga freelancers, yung mga medyo free radicals na hindi nakatali sa institutions. And I think those efforts, kahit they can't exactly be quantified or numerical, dyan din, tas patong din yung patriarchy sa art, sa music. So, even though the numbers seem stacked against us somehow, parang, pag binitawan ko yung art, hindi ko na mapipigilan mag-art. Dapat ba naging doctor na lang ako? Dapat ba naging banker? Pag binitawan ko, hindi ako magiging masaya. Hence, self-care din. Pero, yung recognizing na pag parang, pero yung pag wala kang institutional support na ganito, mas nanggagaling sa peers mo na hindi formalized na associations or connections.
Parang dagdag ko lang I think important yung mga points na sinasabi ni Mariah. Kasi yung tendency ngayon talaga is, ang dami ng walang formal na trabaho, di ba? Ang daming nawalan ng trabaho. So nagbago talaga. Pero even before the pandemic, mataas ang informal, di ba? Ang bilang ng workers in the informal economy. And this concerns over the lack of institutional support, they shouldn't be Kasi kahit wala kang formal employer, dapat may protection ka from the government through may mga diyan may mga advocacies din diyan dapat nga hindi na nakakabit may mga pinupush din na dapat hindi na nakakabit sa formality of your work, yung iyong social protection, etc. Creative workers yun kasi very na siya, kumbaga hindi naman sa magiging norm pero shared concern ito ng marami lalo ngayon.
Okay. Ayun, medyo naghang lang sa akin, nag-unstable yung connection ko. Pero yeah, thank you for your insights about that, no. Marami talaga yung naging unstable, especially ngayon na tinamaan tayo ng pandemic. So really, the support that we're going for is also just beyond ourselves when we talk about self-care. And in fact, actually meron ditong question din. Sabi niya, may the government should allocate some of the resources in promoting self-care para sa mga mamamayan, which is na-bring up din dito sa comment ni Ingrid about community care. So ayun. Paano nga ba? What for you? How for you this work, yung community care? Is it more of I should be okay first so I can contribute, or more of the community should be okay first before or is there even this kind of prioritization? What do you think about this po? Maybe Ms. Tina has any thoughts?
Hello? Okay na ba? Yan. Parang gusto ko lang i-respond yung yung question kanina about the government, maglaan ng budget for the government. Kasi naisip ko lang yung yung usapin ng 5% God. Kasi baka hindi na ma-maximize yun sa ngayon because of other priorities din. Pero hindi ko alam kung paano yun titingnan at ma-include yung usapin na hindi naman ma-include pero andun na siya, pero paano siya mai-improve pa, ma-maximize yung budget na yon for the benefit of this for the benefit of this women and also their yung self-care na usapin. Kasi sa karamihan, sa observation ko lang din, yun nga, yung budget na yun, ay minsan nagagamit siya in another way, Hindi siya yung, ang tawag doon, hindi siya yung nagagamit siya for that particular purpose, pero ginagamit siya, nire-realign, kumbaga. So, baka magandang i-explore yung ganung pagkakataon para lang din mas matugunan yung mga ganitong pangyayari. Pero, yung isang question na nare-raise mo ngayon, Ja, kasi medyo malakas na yung ulan dito sa likod ko. Hindi ko na nakuha yung last part. Static na yung internet connectivity ko. Hello?
It's
Okay.
more of I just ask kung ano yung thoughts mo about community care. Do you think parang ang tanong ko ay, do you think you should be okay first self-care muna so that you can add to community care? Or ano ba, do you have that kind of prioritization? Ano yung insights mo when it comes to collective well-being?
Well, kasi ang community care mo naman, you have to determine ano yung pangangailangan ng community mo. Maingay ba yung background ko? Oo, kung ano yung pangangailangan ng community. Kasi ang mahirap lang naman doon, magbibigay ka na, bawa ikaw yung mag-organize ng isang activity for a community care program, kunwari lang, no? I-feed mo lang yun sa kanila, pero hindi naman pala yun yung kailangan. So, I think mahirap yun na panindigan at gawin. So, baka better na alamin muna kung ano yung pangangailangan ng grupo or ng community mo bago ka magbigay ng na isang klaseng activity for them or ano. Good.
Does anyone want to add about that?
Imagine ko, ano kaya itsura nung may project for community care. Baka maging token project yan. Pero, nag-agree ako kay Tina na at this point, where we are right now, i-cover muna yung basics, no? Ayusin muna yung response sa pandemic, di ba? And then, ayusin yung mga, ang daming issue na long-standing, no? Pagdating bilang worker man yan, o ultimo nga, pagiging advocate, no? With the passage of the anti-terrorism law. Alam mo yon, parang ang daming binabangga tuloy sa atin bilang ordinaryong mamamayan. Tanggalin lang muna to, ang laking tulong na di ba? Ipatupad ng maayos yung mga pro-women and gender-responsive na laws, ang laking bagay na, di ba? Kung imaginein mo na makover lang sana yung basic na kailangan ng mga tao at ma-allow sila to make better choices, ang laking bagay na nun.
Okay, thank you. Ayun, so may mga nakukuha tayong request. But we'll shed light on that later. Anyway, ayun, thank you for your insights. I'm just looking back at my notes kasi ang dami yung nagbanggit kanina about especially yung part about when it comes to community care, may tendency na maging band-aid solution, mga pa-Zumba and stuff like that. So ayun, dapat talaga may participation, nabanggit ni Ms. Weng, yung community in making the choices that they want so that we actually can take care of our communities and can take care of ourselves in turn. So ngayon na aware naman tayo din sa mga pagkukulang, no, sa state support and stuff like that, I just also like to get to know kung ano yung mga, do you have any recommendations when it comes to how the government right now can, or what kind of support in your communities, siguro for example kay Ms. Mariah as a creative, what kind of support does your community or you as a creative need right now so that you can say na, okay, this is caring for us, caring for me. this is the support that I need. What are these things for you? Siguro I like to lang din clarify kasi nabanggit ni Miss Mariah kanina na for example as a musician nawalan sila ng gigs and stuff like that. So what support would help you right now? Do you need like more support when it comes to like technology that you have? Do you need more I'd also like to, so kay Miss Mariah sana muna and then we'll proceed with Miss Weng next and siguro Miss Tina din.
Well, siguro yung malaking kawalan ay yung mahirap sa akin nga. Wala nang gigs, wala nang, especially for music or for art, it's so dependent on having these spaces, being able to go to gigs or bands play, being able to go to art happenings. Tapos ngayon nawawala sila. How can we, and yung question to myself, how can I still feel like hindi ako isolated?
It's more of, do you have do you want to, ano yung mga support na kailangan mo ngayon so that you can say na, okay, our community is being taken care of?
Kailangan ng financial support para sa mga artists.
How about anyone else? Do you have like, for example, kay Miss Weng, although I'm hindi nag-hold ng classes ngayon yung UP.
Pero tuloy naman yung trabaho namin kasi we're preparing for the incoming SEM, right? Yes. Pero yun nga, as part siguro of the academe, ang UP kasi in a better position to adapt dito sa transition. Although hindi perfect, we're still learning as we go along din. Pero kung titingnan mo yung education system as a whole, ang dapat na ayusin. Even hindi na nga ito, parang wala pa nga tayo dun sa paano magse-self-care, kundi paano mo, parang nga sa survival pa lang nga, yung question, everyone's worried about the incoming school year, ano bang mode, paano ba ito gagawin. So, ayusin lang muna sana yung yung response given the new context. Again, ang laking bagay na nun. Siguro doon muna ako focus. Tumitigil, nag-freeze ang aking screen. My internet connection is unstable.
Ayan. Ms. Tina, do you want to add anything? Ano yung mga napapansin mo siguro din naman as someone from CSOs or actually as someone who's working with human rights defenders din what are the recommendations that you can like suggest so that the community that you're in can better take care of itself? As a circle, ano yung mga mara-recommend or masasuggest mo? Nakamute ka, Ms. Tina.
Ayan, hello. Ayan. So, akin baka pwede kong isuggest, although hindi naman lahat kasi ay nagkakaroon ng access or resources sa technology, For those who has access, baka maganda yung gamitin din natin yung technology by creating a small packets, Yung small packets na yon, let's consider them as a small group community na pwede nating puntahan or hingan ng suporta. So that small packets can also be served as a safe space din para din magkaroon ng linaw on our part na baka dito sa small packets na to ay sagad na. Ibig sabihin, parang this causes me stress. Baka I have to find another packets na pwedeng mag-build sa akin ng panibagong, parang panibagong simula or pag-reclaim nung nawalang energy. So sa pag-gano, so let's create a small packets within our own circles and then, yeah. And ano pa ba? Yung mahalaga, yung pakikipaghuntahan, yung simpleng pakikipagkumustahan sa bawat isa. Ano din yun nakaka-empower din yun sa panahon ngayon. Yung simpleng pag-hi lang or although masyado ng gas-gas, di ba? Yung pagiging kumusta, kasi very vague yun for some. Sino ba yung kinukumusta mo? Is it my community or yung ako mismo as an tao na kaibigan mo? So baka magandang ganun din yung pagsimulan din natin. But of course, yung mga ilang practices naman na ginagawa mo for you to reclaim yourself, who you are, para maging functional ka, i-strengthen pa natin yon. And then, if you think na sa tingin mo ay kailangan mo nang maghanap ng tulong, whether if it's, you need to see a psychologist or psychiatrist, ano din siya, wag mo din ipagsawalang bahala. Kasi, matindi rin naman yung balik kapag hindi mo na kayang i-handle yung stress mo. May may helpers din na kaakibat. So, yun, yung mga ganun lang.
I also want to share an example pala of collective self-care kasi may isang effort na shelter fund. So, it was, shelter fund got a lot of artists na photographers to contribute high quality prints. Tapos they sold them, they exhibited them on a website. Tapos, sa arrangement na yon, all artists would get paid for contributing a photo kasi parang the total earnings parang a portion of it would be split amongst the artists. All artists who participate regardless of like who sold more or who sold the least. And I think that was parang gusto ko rin yung model na yun na parang yun, solidarity din, parang a collective effort to support each other na organized amongst artists then. Also, another thing we need is health insurance para sa mga freelancers.
That's true. Very true yan. Ayun. Oo. Thank you for bringing that up, no? So, yung konsepto lang ng solidarity, it's really a strong thing to have for collective care. And actually, sa community ng creatives, may mga nakikita ko yung mga tumutugtog nga ng gigs online and stuff like that. And also, I see some artists who are, taking in commissions now and also selling their art and stuff like that. So, ayun, people are really finding ways then, no, to also take care of each other right now. Like what Miss Mariah said, may mga nakita ko before, pero it's more of nagkaroon din ng donation drive ng mga earlier days ng for the musicians din So,
Janina?
Yes po, Miss Wang.
Malinaw, pumapasok ba yung aking
Yes, oo. Kanina medyo siya pero okay na po ulit.
Sorry for that. Naaalala ko din, and in reflection din, ito kasing panahon na ito, it really demands us to be more creative, 'di ba? And yung pagdating sa technology, ako medyo suspicious ako with technology, pero medyo hopeful ako na may we have opportunities naman to take control of these tools, 'di ba? Tapos naalala ko lang pala, there's this one effort in a project, in a human rights project I'm part of, na isipin mo kung paano, or it was a challenge for us, how to organize several organizations kasi nagna-network building kami. And one of the ways we made sure to facilitate that was to actually provide gadgets and load doon sa mga kailangan naming kausapin. No? So in a way, and din na, kumbaga, nafa-facilitate mo yung advocacy work ng iba and making sure that communication, interactions continue. Kumbaga may sense of, kahit papaano, sense of normalcy in what we do. So I think malaking bagay yung we find ways to be creative, no? Para may para nga hindi totally tayo no-overwhelm nitong bagong sitwasyon na ito.
Thank you, Ms. Weng. Ayun, since nabanggit mo rin, no, na we are, may mga instances, and I feel you, na tech is suspicious. May mga minsan talaga na you have to double check or be wary about certain like applications or stuff like that. And I also want to get Ms. Tina's insight on this. Ikaw, how do you, what are the issues that you usually, parang ano yung chine-check mo sa technology when you want to use something and stuff like that while you're taking care of yourself?
You mean the security issues ng technology or?
Yes, if meron bang ganon?
Yeah, somehow. Kasi halimbawa, kung magbabanggit ako ng ilang tools, kunwari yung Fitbit, kasi 'di ba, meron yan may mga apps sila na dine-develop to check your emotions, your movement, ganyan. So may ganon. So that security in a perspective of kung internet rights advocate ka, may usapin kasi doon ng security no na pwede mong tingnan. Halimbawa, yung bang pag-calculate ng emotions mo in a day, saan napupunta yun? Na-monetize ba yun ng company na nag-develop? That's one. And kung halimbawa yung 8 glasses of water a day ninyo, ay may tinitik ka. Kasi may ganun may nakita kong ganong app na parang ititik mo lang siya, na ito yung number of glasses na inom ko in a day. Tapos saan napupunta din yung datos na yon? So, baka may ganun. Yung nakikita ng mga, ano ba tawag sa kanila? Yung mga developer, kung ano yung movement ng isang individual. And then, from that movement or from that data, pwede nilang ibenta yon at i-market to somewhere. Tapos yun, magpo-produce ng product or whatever. So ganun siya. So, yun naman din yung isang security issues na pwede rin nating tingnan. But again, hindi naman siya sinasabi na effective din. Pero it's just a tool na pwede mo magamit for you to become to be, yung well-being mo, mas sustain mo din siya ng maayos. So,
yes. Thank you so much. So, ayun. So, marami tayong na-discuss din, no, today. Actually, we got a request here kung kumanta si Miss Maraya at si Miss Weng. But I'll leave that to you if you want before we end. But I just like to to bring up na okay, malaki nga yung role ng technology when we're doing this, and self-care is something that is not just at the individual level. Also, before we close, I'd just like to ask anyone if you would like to announce anything. Please do leave us yung mga last messages nyo before announcements that you'd like.
Ako, may pa-plug ako. Plug artista. Kasi musician yung dalawa. But anyway, pa-plug ko lang po yung upcoming ang tawag nito, webinar na gagawin namin on Tuesday. So, this is a second series nung discussion namin on freedom of expression. So nakaano naman to, the discussion is not limited to the Anti-Terror Act, but ano yung mga implications lang nung iba't ibang threats ng freedom of expression in the Philippines sa ngayon. One of those lang yung yung isang sa provision ng Anti-Terror Act. So may mga invited resource speakers kami. Different level naman ito, from the journalists, journalists, human rights defenders, and baka may legal din, full na dadalo. So it's on Thursday, August 20, 3 p.m. din po. And it's going to be live naman, live streaming din siya on Facebook.
Yes, yung title po niyan is What's Next for Freedom of Expression. Yan. Okay. So ayun, let's proceed po sa mga last messages po ni Ms. Weng or Ms. Maraya, and then if you also have any announcement that you would like to share po with the audience. Ms. Maraya po, you can proceed po first.
Well, related na rin to sa few lines from my favorite song from, I'm not going to sing it na, pero yung sa Rage ng The Jerks, I'll not go gently into the night, rage against the dying of the light. So go not gently in rage with me. Tapos kailangan mo self-care pa para makaka-rage pa rin tayo. Ayun.
Ayun. How about you, Ms. Weng? Any last messages po about the discussion, and also if you have any announcements?
No announcements naman, pero lang siguro, emphasize ko na, well, let's take care of ourselves, no? Let's take care of each other. If others find that self-indulgent, then so be it. Yun lang. Thanks.
Ayun. So, ayun, that ends our discussion for today. Again, thank you, Ms. Maria and Ms. Weng, for joining us, and also for your insights. Looking forward to also having you with us again for my future activities. So, again, thank you. And then, abangan na lang po yung next activity ng Foundation for Media Alternatives sa Thursday. What's next for freedom of expression? So, ayun lang po. Ms. Tina, do you have anything else?
Wala naman.
Wala na. Okay. So, thank you po. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you
FMA.
very
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Salamat.
Thank you.